door that's been closed for over a decade is about to open again. Somewhere in the writers' room at NCIS, a decision was made that nobody saw coming. Not after a cancellation, not after a decade of silence, not after fans had already made peace with saying goodbye. And the timing of it, coming right after NCIS lost one of its most important characters, is not an accident. Something bigger is shifting inside this show. And Tony DiNozzo, walking back through that bullpen door, is only the visible part of it. If you've watched NCIS for any length of time, you already know why this matters. Tony wasn't just a character. He was the heartbeat of the show's early identity. The guy quoting movies in the middle of a crime scene. The guy who somehow made devastating cases feel survivable because he refused to let the room go cold. And underneath all of that charm was a slow-burning, decade-spanning story with Ziva David that fans followed through breakups, deaths, resurrections, and finally, an ending that happened almost entirely off-screen. So when Michael Weatherly's comeback was confirmed, it reopened a wound that a lot of longtime viewers thought had already scarred over. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because this isn't the first time Weatherly and Ziva actress Cote de Pablo tried to give these characters closure. Paramount Plus actually built an entire spin-off around them, following Tony and Ziva as they raced to protect their daughter and rebuild whatever was left between them. And for a moment, it worked. Audiences responded. There was real hope that the pair had finally found their ending. Then the show got canceled anyway, despite the interest, leaving that story hanging in a strange kind of limbo, resolved emotionally, but unfinished as a series. It's the kind of cancellation that leaves you wondering whether the network even understood what they had. So ask yourself this, why bring Tony back to the mothership instead of trying to save the spinoff? That's the real mystery here. And the answer says a lot about where NCIS is heading next. The timing lines up with something painful. Leon Vance, one of the last original pillars of this franchise, has died within the show's story, and that loss leaves an actual hole at the top of the organization, a director's chair with nobody sitting in it. NCIS has never been a show that leaves power vacuums alone for long, which raises an obvious question fans are already buzzing about. Is Tony coming back to investigate, to grieve, or to lead? He's not the most senior agent walking into that bullpen anymore. Torres, Knight, and Parker have all built their own dynamic without him, and Tony re-entering that structure means somebody's role, habits, or authority has to bend to make room for him. That kind of disruption rarely happens by accident in a procedural. It usually means the writers need him there for a reason bigger than nostalgia. And notice who else has been there since day one. McGee. With Tony's return, the only two people left from the show's original era are suddenly standing in the same room again, and that alone changes the emotional temperature of every scene they share. There's a real possibility that Tony isn't just filling an empty desk. He could be stepping into some version of Vance's old authority, even temporarily, while the show figures out who its next real leader is going to be. Or maybe that job goes to Parker, and Tony becomes something else entirely. A mentor, an outside voice, someone whose distance from the team for over a decade makes him uniquely able to see what everyone else has stopped noticing. What's actually pulling Tony back into this world? According to reporting from Deadline, Weatherly is set for a season-long arc, which means this isn't a nostalgic cameo or a one-episode victory lap. This is a real storyline. Before this, Tony had been running a security firm overseas, a life that looked stable on paper, but clearly wasn't fulfilling whatever he was actually looking for. The spinoff had ended with him and Ziva hoping to try again, hinting that maybe reconnecting with her and with the version of himself that existed when he was an active agent is what's calling him home. Right now, there's no confirmation on whether Ziva follows him back into this world too, and NCIS appears to be deliberately withholding that answer. That silence itself might be the biggest clue of all. If the writers wanted to close the door on Ziva completely, they could say so. Instead, they're letting the mystery breathe. While all of that unfolds, there's another mystery finally getting resolved, one that's haunted fans since the earliest seasons. It has nothing to do with cases or villains. It's about Gibbs' boats. For years, every single time Gibbs finished building one of his handcrafted boats in the basement, it would simply appear outside, fully formed, with absolutely no explanation of how it physically got there. The show even poked fun at itself over this, with Torres cataloging the increasingly ridiculous fan theories, secret pulley systems, moving walls, even a rumored tunnel running underneath the house. It became one of those quiet inside jokes between the show and its audience, something everyone noticed but nobody expected to actually be addressed. Now, executive producer Scott Williams has finally given fans a real answer. Speaking on the Partners in Proby's podcast, Williams explained that the solution the writers eventually landed on involved Gibbs knocking a hole straight through his own basement wall to get the boats out, patching it up afterward, and just building the next one anyway. It was framed less as a plot mechanic and more as a reflection of who Gibbs actually is, a man who never cared about convenience or logistics, only about the meditative act of building something with his hands. Getting the boat outside was never the point. The work itself was. That detail is worth sitting with for a second, because it says something quietly profound about Gibbs as a character. He's a man defined by control in every part of his professional life, yet in the one space that belonged only to him, he was completely unbothered by an unsolved, structurally absurd problem. He'd rather tear down a wall than stop what he loved doing. Doesn't that tell you exactly why he was able to walk away from NCIS entirely and still remain the emotional center of gravity for a show that's been without him for years? Here's the harder truth buried in all this, though. As satisfying as Williams' explanation is, it's an answer given in a podcast, not shown on screen, which means the show never actually depicted it, and now, with Gibbs retired in Alaska, it may never get the chance to. Sure, Mark Harmon's already confirmed to return as present-day Gibbs in NCIS Origins, but that's a different series, following a much younger version of the character decades earlier. The boat wall mystery lives specifically in the modern-day timeline, which means unless the flagship show finds a reason to bring Gibbs back on screen, one of its oldest and most beloved mysteries will remain something fans only heard about secondhand. And Gibbs isn't the only original piece of this universe re-entering the picture right now. Eric Christian Olsen, known to franchise fans as Marty Deeks from NCIS Los Angeles, is stepping into an executive producer role on NCIS Origins for its upcoming season. It's a curious pairing on the surface, since Origins has almost no direct connection to the Los Angeles spinoff or to Deeks as a character. But look at the pattern forming here. Olsen previously partnered with CBS through his production company after NCIS Los Angeles ended, which suggests this move is less about creative overlap and more about an existing, trusted relationship extending into new territory. Whether that eventually opens the door for Deeks himself to reappear somewhere in the franchise, whether in the flagship show or in LL Cool J's upcoming NCIS New York, is still an open question, but it's exactly the kind of connective tissue this franchise has been building for years. Put it all together and a much bigger picture starts to emerge. Tony returning. Gibbs, oldest mystery finally being addressed, even if only verbally. Olsen crossing over into a corner of the universe that seems unrelated on the surface. None of these moves happened in isolation. NCIS is clearly in the middle of redefining what its universe even means 20 years in, using its most trusted original faces to anchor a franchise that lost its central figure and is still figuring out what comes next. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Is Tony's return about finally giving him and Ziva the ending the spinoff never got to finish? Or is NCIS using him to fill a leadership void that Vance's death left wide open? Maybe it's both. Maybe that's exactly the point. Whatever the answer turns out to be, one thing is certain. After everything this show has lost, seeing Tony DiNozzo walk back into that bullpen isn't just fan service. It's proof that even after 20 years, NCIS still knows exactly which ghost to bring back when it needs to remind everyone why they fell in love with this show in the first place. What do you think Tony's real reason for coming back is? Closure with Ziva, or stepping into the leadership gap Vance left behind? Drop your theory in the comments. If this breakdown helped you make sense of everything happening in the NCIS universe right now, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow fan who needs to catch up.